It says, "You're only free when you realize you belong to no place. You belong to every place, no place at all. The price is high, the reward is great." I think that speaks to like an internal struggle of like expressing yourself, but also wanting to hear other people's side of things, but also wanting to be true to yourself, have a commonality amongst, your fellow people.
Welcome to the Uncommonly Peculiar podcast, the number one space cultivating truth, love, and transparency with your girl, A Voice and an Influence. Welcome to episode 3. I'm so excited to record this episode because I just was made aware that this month is National Social Work Awareness Month. And it's so interesting to me because when I recorded episode 2, it was a divinely guided episode because it was kind of unexpected in terms of context. But just like no other, this episode will also be one of those divinely guided episodes. And so, with that being said, I want to just shed some light on Social Work Awareness Month. It was actually founded I believe in 1984, the White House declared it National Social Work Awareness Month. That was actually two years before I was born. Now I'm telling my age. But I say that because we have this saying as social workers that social work finds you. You don't choose social work. And so this episode will be like no other because I do have 2 other social workers here with me today. And before I introduce them, I want to remind everyone that this podcast is here to bridge the gap between authenticity and humanity. So we are all here to be authentic with you. We all come from different walks of life, but we share in common the goal of being human, the goal of being authentic. Whereas we're all social workers, but this episode is not affiliated with any organization nor agency, okay? We're all social workers in our own right, but we will be talking about authenticity and humanity today. With that being said, I would like to introduce my 2 guests, Rachel Boyles and Jennifer Crone.
Hey, y'all.
Welcome. Hello.
Hello.
This is long time coming.
Long time. We've been talking about this for a minute.
Yes. We finally made it, guys. I am super excited. How are you guys feeling?
Good, nervous, but good. Ready to
Yes.
get into it.
I have a
Yes.
feeling it's just going to be like one of our office discussions.
Yes. It's so funny how we all just are able to get along so well and then also learn so much from each other. Like you 2 ladies really is the epitome of authenticity, but also able to be so empathetic to others. That is like the most important thing.
Yeah.
Yes. So, you guys want to jump into the questions?
Okay.
Sure. Let's do it.
Let's get right into it. So, question number 1. Would you consider yourself an authentic person? Would you consider yourself an authentic person? Who wants to start?
I could start. I think I have my moments. I think not 100% of the time, for sure. I feel like all life is a stage, and depending on where you're at and what you're doing, or at least for me, I show different sides of myself.
Yes.
This could range from like being around family to work. Obviously, there's different like boundaries and expectations, professionalism.
Right.
And then being around friends, it just is a completely different beast too. So I think in different situations, I'm authentic to a point, but not really fully, I would say.
Yeah. Definitely. I definitely think that authenticity is one of those things that requires a lot of self-reflection and also different seasons, right, of growth. As we continue on our journey in life here, we just got to remember like we're on a journey, right? It's a journey to be had, right? But also to be lived. So that's a beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
I agree. I kind of feel the same way though. Like I'm authentic in my intentions, my feelings, and what I believe as a person, and I would never act against that.
Right.
But like you said, there's different versions of myself that you present in different scenarios,
Yeah.
which might not always be authentic to how I feel. Like when I'm at work,
Mm.
I'm authentic to a point, right? Like, but you never it there's like when they say like people really don't want you to be your authentic self, like people
Yes.
don't always accept that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm authentic to a point, but it really depends on the situation that I'm in. Cause like you said, like based on who I'm with, the social situation that I'm in, I could be different. But like I said, I'll never stray away from who I am at its core. Like at my core, I'm not gonna do that. But you're not always gonna get who I truly am in every scenario.
Yeah. I totally feel that. I definitely feel that, like, for myself, because it's been so hard to be authentic and to get to a point where I'm like just honest with myself about like how I feel, and being able to like be open about that and tell other people like when you hurt my feelings, like, or when, I don't agree with you, right?
Mhm.
But being able to like sit in that and be comfortable enough to know like, okay, I'm being true to myself in that moment, and so it's okay. Like it's okay to express that, you know?
Mhm.
Like, is there ever times like when you feel like you're totally like not showing up as yourself and you like second guess, like, oh my goodness, I wish I would have said this. I wish I would have said that. Or should I say this? Or should I say that? Like in the moment, like throughout this journey, like because we know that like authenticity is a lifelong journey of reaching like this highest expression of yourself. Like authenticity has been said to be like the highest energy that there is.
Mhm.
So is there ever like moments where you realize like maybe I'm not showing up as myself and I should probably pivot in this moment?
I think that's probably something that I think about a lot,
Mhm.
especially because where I grew up, I came from a small town that kind of comes with a lot of, I'll say, small town thinking. Not
Okay.
really. A lot of people, or at least the feeling that I get when I go home, is like not a whole lot of open mindedness. And
Mhm.
just to be a little forthcoming, I am a part of the LGBTQ community, so
Mhm.
there's um there's kind of a fear there when I return home.
Yeah.
Like, do I want to be fully myself and fully open, like when I go out to like the small town bar that's in
Mhm.
my town where I know half the bartenders because I went to school with them? Like,
Mhm.
do I want to fully full show up as myself?
Right.
And I think sometimes that's where like an internal struggle shows up for me.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I just kind of have to decide like what I'm okay with in that moment. Like, is it worth it for me to be as comfortable as I want to be versus like, I guess, what I perceive as the norm
Right.
going back home. So I think it's definitely an internal struggle that is something that I often like. I very much think about a lot. It's
Yeah.
a it's just a difficult thing.
Yeah. Because it requires a level of vulnerability.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And for you to trust yourself, but also trust yourself enough to handle how other people are going to respond.
Mhm.
Like that is definitely something that I feel like a lot of people shy away from because we don't want to hurt other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
You
in
don't
the
want to make
midst
other
of that,
people uncomfortable. All of
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly. But in the midst of that, it's like, the question I would ask is like, do we do ourselves a disservice in those moments when we put other people like above how we feel?
I don't know. That's interesting. Because like when I think about that, because sometimes, right, your authentic reactions and your authentic thoughts are not always pleasant. They're not always nice.
True.
They're not always considerate of other people, right?
Mhm.
Like I can say that about myself. Like y'all know how I am. I can be very blunt. I can be
Mhm.
very honest. I
Mhm.
love that about myself. That makes me
Yes.
authentic in that way. But also, it's not, I don't always deliver things in the best way either.
Mhm.
Like I
Mhm.
can be very articulate, but when I get in that moment, especially when I'm upset, I don't always deliver things in the way that I should or that I know
Mhm.
I could, right?
Mhm.
So, but with that being said, when I have those moments, that is like my true authentic reaction, right? Like,
Right.
and you don't always think about that. And
Right.
so I think about that question in terms of considering how other people feel
Mhm.
about your authentic reaction or whatever you say, because sometimes it's just not always nice.
Right.
So, at least for me, that's how I think about it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I totally understand. I also think that, like, in that moment, that is also where your humanity is shown, right? Because you're actually being empathetic, right, towards other people. Because in that moment, if you can realize, like, oh, that didn't come off the way I intended for it to come off, or maybe it did come off the way I intended for it to come
Right.
off, right? But at the same time, when I'm considering your feelings and I'm considering the environment where I am, I can apologize, right? That is also being authentic because you're
Sure.
able to admit, and to take accountability for your feelings. And I think that is the piece where a lot of people, kind of shy away from in the moments where we have these automatic thoughts or we have these automatic feelings, right? But we tend to, kind of diminish them because of how other people may perceive them, right? But it's okay to be human in that way. Like, I'm still human. I am going to get upset sometimes. Sometimes my tone may be higher than it needs to be in a professional setting or whatever, right? But at the same time, I can own it, right? I can own it and say, hey, maybe that was not politically correct, right? But at the same time, when you said that, this is what came up for me. Like, this is what came up for me, right? I think more conversations like that is what is needed in our society because we all have different triggers. We all have different experiences and also different ideologies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's the big one right there, the ideologies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if you don't believe what I believe, you know what I mean? If you don't do what I do, if you don't date the same people I date, like, it's like, or you don't come from where I come from, then something's wrong with you. Like, how do we get past that?
Well, you know how I feel about that. Because, like,
Yes.
sometimes ideologies come down to morals,
Yes.
right?
For sure.
So we can have different ideologies about different things, but when it comes to morals, like, if your morals don't lie where mine lie, then yeah, we're not going to get along. And I'm not going to try to understand where you're coming from because at the end of the day, depending on what that ideology is, and I can read your morals. What's important to you? Because essentially your ideology tells me what you value, what's important to you. And if you hold a certain ideology that I don't agree with, it tells me at the end of the day what your bottom line is, what you're willing to accept, what you're willing not to accept. And I don't know, I think in today's day and age, like, it's just not something that I can say is so easy to just, you have your opinion, I have my opinion. Let's leave it at that. Can't we just coexist? No, we can't. Personally, for me, right? Because at the end of the day, like I said, those are your morals. And sometimes an ideology is a bad ideology. You can have a bad ideology, you can have a good one, right? And that is subjective, but what's subjective to me, and what I think is not always going to align with you. And if I know that there's certain things that I care about in terms of humanity, human rights in general that you don't value based off of your ideologies, I can't mess with you. Like, we can't, no. Cuz I don't know. There's certain things that I'm willing to, like, maybe tolerate, but when it comes to, like, human rights and what people deserve as, like, just basic things,
Yeah.
it's not negotiable for me.
Yeah.
So, like, it's hard. I can't. I think in today's climate, we can't just say it's so easy to coexist because it's really not.
Yeah.
You know.
That's funny because that was going to be my question. Like, I was going to say, but do you think it's okay? Can you coexist? Like, come on now, sis. Can you coexist with someone who doesn't have the same ideologies as you? But for some reason, I feel like you can.
I think it depends on the ideology.
Okay.
Like, you would have to give me an example, but like we would be here forever at that point.
Yeah.
Like if we talk
Mhm.
about that,
Right.
it really depends.
Yeah, there's
But-
levels to it for sure.
Right.
Because like when I think about it, I think it's kind of fun having conversations with people who think of things differently for me.
For sure.
Because I can kind of take myself out of it and experience their viewpoint. I
Mhm.
might not agree with it for sure,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I feel like I have a way with people where I can create like an open space where people can express themselves, and I get to
Yes.
see a lot of people's true reactions and true selves because I kind of keep it level depending on what the topic is,
You're
obviously.
good at that. Yeah.
So I get to see like a lot of people's true selves and how they express themselves, and that
Mhm.
for me is kind of interesting because I get to reflect, and it's kind of like a learning afterwards. Like, okay, this is where this person is coming from. I might
Mhm.
not agree with it, but that's their truth and their experience, and I just find it like fascinating because nobody's the same. Like even you can be very similar as some people, but there'll even be differences amongst
Mhm.
that too. So I think it's kind of fun to, in a way, learn where people are coming from and see their perspectives and viewpoints, and kind of just take it as like okay, that's just how you feel.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's fun for you. It's frustrating for me.
Yeah.
So I can't do it.
Yeah, we're
Right?
kind of
Like,
different in that
I
way.
can't do that with people.
So, the thing about this is that me and Rachel, we always go back and forth on this topic because I see her, in different scenario with different people, right?
Mhm.
Having these conversations that may have different ideologies than what you have. But I think maybe you're saying like once you have the conversation and you understand like their ideology, then you are saying that you may not be able to coexist in that level of conversation, but
Mhm.
not necessarily like coexist with the person.
Say that again.
So meaning like you can sit in a room with someone, right, and have a level conversation with them. But at the moment that you guys start talking about a particular ideology and you see their viewpoint and where they stand, then that's where it becomes difficult for you to continue to coexist with that person.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But prior to that, you can have a conversation with them.
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends on the person, right? Like I
Mhm.
can usually tell
Yeah.
if it's the
Mhm.
kind of person that can have an open dialogue, who's
Okay.
open to being educated on my viewpoints
Mhm.
and vice versa. But
Okay.
it depends. It depends on the person.
Now,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. I
But
agree.
usually you could tell.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Usually
true.
you could
Like it's not
tell,
going nowhere.
like, am I gonna have an intelligent conversation? And if
Right.
Yes.
not, there's no point.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
I can't bring myself down to have a conversation with somebody who I know
Mhm.
is just like, what is it like? I don't know what the whole thing is, but it's like I can't have a conversation with you when you're committed to misunderstanding me.
There's
Mhm.
got to be an openness
Yeah.
about it.
You
Yeah.
have to be open. And sometimes
Mhm.
I'm not open to it,
Hmm.
but I don't really care.
Yeah. But also I
Mhm.
think that's discernment too though.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? That's where that maturity steps in and that's where that self-awareness steps in as well
Mhm.
because you're self-aware, okay, we're not going anywhere past this point. And
Right.
so at that point like I agree like so you have to be wise,
Mhm.
right? You
Mhm.
have to pick your battles. You should not be going back and forth with
Yes.
someone who is
Yeah,
not
Especially
open.
not on the internet, girl.
Oh.
Have you tried
Right.
that?
Oh
It's
Jesus.
the worst time ever.
It's kind of a
Man.
waste of energy at
It's
the
a
end of the
waste
day if
because
there's no
there's
give and
Come on.
right.
give and take.
Come
But
on.
I find that when you have conversations with people like in person, it's different.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's very different. Because people can say
Truly.
whatever they want on the internet. You can
Yeah.
type whatever you want, but when you're face to face, you have to answer to somebody.
Mhm.
It's different.
Mhm.
Yeah. Not for sure.
I have this quote here from a book by Brene Brown that kind of sums up what we were talking about in regards to like speaking with others with different viewpoints,
Mhm.
but also being authentic, but also searching for belonging at the same
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
So this quote is by Maya Angelou,
Mhm.
and it says, "You're only free when you realize you belong to no place. You belong to every place, no place at all. The price is high, but the reward is great."
Wow.
And I think that speaks to like an internal struggle of like
Mhm.
expressing yourself, but also wanting to hear other people's side of things, but also want to be true to yourself,
Mm.
but also trying to, have a commonality amongst, your fellow people, because we all do exist in this world. And
Yeah.
Like it's a hard thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And that brings me to question number 2, which says, how has your authenticity been challenged? Because one of those things, like, it is very hard to have conversations with people who have already made up their mind about you. Sometimes they're not even open to the conversation, the topic of discussion. It's more focused on who you are and what you did to them, to whereas you can't even get to the things that has hurt you
Hmm.
or the things that has caused you to have a different perspective about the person. You can't even get to that because the person is just so focused on who you are and what you represent when they see you.
I think for me, I take a little bit of a more internal viewpoint on that.
Mhm.
I think I challenge my own authenticity sometimes and
Mm.
don't always say what I feel. It's more of an internal struggle for me versus like external like conversations with people. It's very much a like, do I have the courage in that moment to say what I'm truly feeling?
Mhm.
Do I feel like it's worth it in that moment to say what I'm truly feeling? And like, will I regret if I say something or not?
Hmm.
And those are always like the thoughts in my head. Um, it's very much an internal thing for me,
Yeah.
more than like the
External.
external situation at hand, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that leads, at least for me, that leads to like some cognitive dissonance
Uh-huh.
where like I'm not, sometimes I feel like I'm not exactly being true to how I'm feeling or thinking, even though I have these values inside. Am I expressing them all the time? I think sometimes not. And that, that just creates strain within my own self that I kind of have to deal with.
Yeah. But you're pretty much aware. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the journey, of being aware because when you're aware, then you can deal with it,
Mhm.
So that's beautiful. Like being aware of those things and being able to say, "Oh, I'm struggling in
Mhm.
this
Hmm.
area," right?
Yeah, and I like to think that I take it at my own pace because this is something I also think about a lot too.
Mhm.
And I'm okay with like maybe not saying what I think in the moment, but like reflecting on it afterwards, thinking about what I would have
Yes.
done differently. Like if I
Mhm.
encounter that situation again, what would I do? More of
That
like a
hindsight is always 2020 all the
yeah,
time.
Man,
and kind of use
yes.
those moments to
Hmm.
reflect and like decide what I would do differently next time or just what I learned from that type thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think for me, I think about it as like me growing up as a woman and just I feel like we're just judged for
Oh,
everything,
yes.
like
Yes.
it's so hard
Mhm.
Yes.
to just grow up as a girl, as a woman. So I feel like this is something I still struggle with, like just doing things and not caring what other people think.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to authenticity, that's a big hurdle for me is presenting myself in a way that is considerate to others,
Mhm.
and considering what other people might think of me in certain situations. That's something I've struggled with for a long time. Um, and as a woman, I think it's really hard to not do that though, because you grow up with these standards, you have to live up to certain things, you have to look a certain way, or it feels like you do. Everybody says like you don't have to,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
there's always like that feeling that you
The
have
pressure
to,
is real.
like you
Yeah,
have
Mhm.
for
to
sure.
do certain stuff to
Mhm.
become successful, to be this person.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, I'm always like, how do you not think about what other people think of you? Like you obviously shouldn't care, but it's really hard as a woman in society, like growing up. I think it's always been really hard for me.
Mhm.
So that's something that's always just like a struggle is how do you just let go of that,
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, I could speak to that too. I think for me, I've gotten to a point where I'll address the elephant in the room. Like I'll just call it out because I'm very self-conscious. So when I show up, I'm always thinking about how I'm showing up. And when I think
Mhm.
about how I'm showing up, if I feel like it's going to make other people uncomfortable, then I'll just say it. I'll just call it out. And then at that point, it's like, as long as whatever environment I'm stepping in, I am eh, I am being professional. I feel like I can be myself because, like, at the core, I'm respectful, right? And at the core, I care about other people.
Mhm.
So I'm never going to be in a place where I'm disrespectful to someone or I'm intentionally trying to hurt someone. However, I do have, biases. I do have blind spots. And so I'm mature enough to say if someone says, like, I'm uncomfortable, that made me uncomfortable. If they're willing and able to speak up about it, I can own it.
Mhm.
Right. So at that point, it's like I'm not too much worried about what anybody has to say
Mhm.
because I'm okay with me. And I spent so much of my life dimming myself down to not be the person that people always pointed at or always had a problem with.
Mhm.
But the majority of my life, I was that person that everybody always had an issue with. So now I've come to a point where I just embraced it. And if I see you have an issue with me and it's something that I can't pinpoint, like I don't understand why,
Mhm.
and if you do something like disrespectful or something that makes me uncomfortable, then I'm going to call it out because now we're going to get to the bottom of what am I bringing up for you that you may be projecting onto me?
Mhm.
Or am I doing something that I may not be aware of? Like I'm always open to hear other people's, it's crazy, but opinions about me.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I'm open to it because that's how I learn and that's how I get better.
Mhm.
Truly.
Yeah.
That's a good space to be in
Thank you.
because I don't
Yeah.
think I can handle people telling me about myself
Uh,
all the time.
yeah, I feel you on that one
Yeah.
too. That level of like insight and feedback that you can get from people,
Mm-hmm.
I think is super invaluable because it does teach you a lot about how
Yes.
you're showing up in relationships,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's with people you know or people you don't know.
Right.
Is it me or is it the other person right now that's making the situation funky?
Exactly.
If it's me, there's something I can do about it.
Yes.
If it's not, there's not a whole lot I can do about it. So let's
Nothing.
just change and focus on
Mhm.
what I can do
What I can
to
do.
come more fully to a situation or
Yeah.
I never thought about it that way. I
Yeah.
like that you said that. Like, am I bringing out something in you or is it really
Mhm.
me?
Right.
I think that that's a good way to look at it because I think it also kind of like calms the situation a little bit, you know?
Yeah, it does.
Like, it's not always you.
No, it's
Mhm.
not.
Right.
Majority of the time, it's not you. No, and I say that because if you are a person who is self-aware,
Mhm.
like being able to understand your own internal dialogue and being a person who understands like where you are and the things that you're working on, it's kind of easy to identify what's happening in a moment when
Mhm.
you're able to take a step back in the moment.
Mhm.
When you have that emotional intelligence and also able to self-regulate,
Mhm.
oh my goodness. The person who can control themselves is a person of power
Uh-huh.
because a lot of times it's really not you. But if it is you, can you own it? Can you take
Mhm.
accountability for it? And I find my challenge the most with my children because they are the ones who get to see the
Mhm.
uncut version of myself,
Mhm.
right? But I pride myself on who am I when no one's looking?
Yeah.
That's where a lot of the work began for me.
Yeah, and I think that
Yeah.
speaks to like what your integrity is, what that
Mhm.
means to you.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and while you guys were talking about like having insight into like who's bringing what to the conversation,
Mhm.
I think it brought me back to how grateful I am to be a social worker.
Yes.
And like my experiences at my previous job, doing therapy with others. I I love helping people, obviously, and it's
Mhm.
such a beautiful thing when you can. But it was a beautiful thing for me to be in that session with someone, and we go through like whatever they're dealing with and whatever, and then having supervision afterwards. That's when you delve
Yes.
into what I brought to the table and what maybe, like I said, this weird thing that threw the conversation way off and it didn't feel
Yes.
as open. Like, what was that? I can change it next time and be more mindful of that next time.
Mhm.
And that, like, in turn, I think seeps into like my own personal life and my own
Mhm.
personal social skills with not only my clients, but like anyone I come in contact with. I think just to give props to social work in general as a field, I think
Oh, yes.
it's taught me a lot.
Oh, yeah. We're
Yep.
superheroes.
Yeah.
Period. I know that's right.
So let's jump into number 3. Question number 3, which is a deep one, okay? How does your authenticity connect to your relationship with God?
I don't have one. No.
That is
No,
fine.
no. I feel like I think I don't know, I was raised Catholic, right? But I was never like my parents never made us go to church. We never went to church. But we like my mom would pray with me at night, all that stuff. But it was just never something that was worked into my life as like looking to him as like a guide.
Mhm.
So I feel like every decision that I've made because of me. And I don't. It just never played a part in my life, really. I'll talk to him sometimes, but it's just not something that I feel like was important enough to me to have a role in my life. And I feel like that's what makes my like I feel like my experience is authentic in that everything I did was because of me, by me, like it's just within myself. Um so I don't know. I don't really put the two together. It's hard for me to like
Mhm.
connect them because I feel like I don't really have that relationship to
Right.
speak to that, you know? Like it's just I did what I did and I did because of me and I worked hard, but I don't know if I can really say that I can make that connection. Yeah, I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least for me, I grew up pretty heavily in the church, like church every Sunday, catechism every Wednesday. After graduating, I would go back and volunteer. We would do like events at the church. Where my family, we have like a family farm, so we would do like petting zoos, very heavily involved in the church. And I think growing up that way was great because it showed me a sense of community.
Mhm.
But I also felt like this sense of not belonging in that community once I started to get a better idea of who I was, and especially related to like my sexuality, my orientation.
Mm.
Um, I'd be here, being around this community that I've known for years, but feeling like I'm not accepted,
Yeah.
and feeling like you can say something to someone's face in the moment, but I feel like something I think about a lot is like love the sinner, not the sin. That doesn't feel genuine to me. So
Mm.
I kind of lost my faith in that sense in a structured, organized way. I no longer go to church or participate in the faith in that way anymore. I mean, more or less, um, like my higher power is more of like the connection to the earth and the connection to others and wildlife and nature
Yeah.
and even like the universe and how everything is super interconnected.
Mm.
So in that way, I think that's where more of my authenticity comes out, is like seeing the bigger picture and how things interact and mingle amongst each other and separately, but together, all the whole picture, I think, is where
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see more of my like higher power in.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like for me it's definitely different. However, I feel like we all are connected and we all have that sense of connection cuz like I resonate with you when you're talking about like just being able to connect to nature, like and being able to connect, you know, to yourself as well, to your point, and knowing that, you have put forth this effort to get to where you are, right? But for me, I definitely have a relationship with God. And in my relationship with God, like I definitely attest where am because of God, because I leaned on God. So that's where that relationship comes in.
Mm.
But like I wouldn't say I grew up in the church, but a lot of my family is Christian and they were very highly religious. But for me, when I was going to church, I would see a lot of people talking about like just what they don't do and
Mhm.
praising God. But then behind closed doors, they were contradicting themselves, being evil, being mean to people,
Right.
talking about people, gossiping. And so that's what led me to find my own relationship with God.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so I don't consider God being separate from myself. I consider me as a goddess and that God lives within me. However, I do believe that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior because that is who I prayed to that helped me become the person that I am today. But I'm not a religious person. I have a
Right.
relationship with God and I don't judge people. There are some things in the Bible that I just don't understand or
Mhm.
don't necessarily agree with. Because I really believe how you treat people is a representation of who you are.
Mhm.
And so God says, in the Bible, it says that you should not judge, but you should love your neighbor as such. So when it comes to people, choosing different walks of life that are contradicting to religion, I don't necessarily agree with it because it's not my job to judge you. I accept you as, my sister, my brother, or however you
Mhm.
decide to want to be recognized as, right?
Mhm.
Who am I to say that that's wrong?
Yeah.
So my, so my like, I don't know, ideology, I guess, is really based on authenticity. It's based on me being real and me being
Mhm.
able to treat people,
Mhm.
with, a level of humanity,
Mhm.
really.
Yeah. I feel like the way that you describe your relationship with God,
Mhm.
I feel like in general, spirituality and not being religious is like more of a new concept.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I feel like people now are more spiritual.
Mhm.
And I think that's why it's always been hard for me to like make that connection because I feel
Mhm.
like growing up and as we got older, we always connected God with religion.
Yeah.
And most
Exactly.
of the people that you see like spread his word and things like that are part of an organized religion and they're
Mhm.
usually Christians.
Mhm.
And at least from what I see, like the people that
Mhm.
I interact with. So it's just hard to make that like separation. And then when you
Yeah.
don't really
Mhm.
grow up with God in your life, it's also like hard to, at least for me, to really come to it and like really want to like I remember there was a video that we were talking about where it's like you have to seek him out to find
Yeah.
him,
Oh yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And I'm not at that point. I don't know, maybe some time down the road, I don't know, but I feel like I'm not at a point where I feel like I need to seek him out. So
Mhm.
obviously I'm not going to find him in the way that people do. But I feel
Mhm.
like that's something that a lot of people, spirituality is something that they engage in now, which I
Mhm.
like. I feel like that's pushing us in like a better direction as opposed to like making us, file into an organized religion because that I feel like it
Mhm.
never works. It just never
Yeah.
works.
And I feel like the spirituality side of things also allows people to accept and like pursue their own
Yeah.
what's the word I'm looking for? Uh like what you actually bring to the table, what you can actually do
Mhm.
versus more of like an internal ability versus like this like God guides me and like everything happens because of him.
Mhm.
I think with the spirituality side of things, you have the agency. You
Mhm.
a little bit more to do what you're capable of in that moment and then like I guess like let everything else go. So I
Yeah.
like I like to think of it that way and I also appreciate like I feel like I learned a lot about you around the spirituality side of things cuz
Mhm.
I've always I've known that I don't enjoy um organized religion so much, but I still feel like there's like a spiritual part to me that it's
Yeah.
been
Right.
hard to bring out and talk about generally until I met you really. Um, you've brought up a lot of points that I really identify with, though I don't really believe in like a God.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I still feel like there's a spirituality part of myself that has become a little bit more open since meeting you and exploring that more. Kind of having more words also to describe it helps.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I feel the
Um,
same way. Yeah.
so
Aw.
yeah, that's been cool.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I also wanted to say too, because like one of the things that got me to this point was referencing the Bible. I don't know exactly what scripture it is, but the Bible says that if you love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as such, then you have fulfilled the law. And so that was one thing that I pride myself on is loving God. And when I say loving God, it's about loving myself because I believe God is inside of me. I believe like we're in alignment, right? But I'm also not attached to this world. Like it gets so deep to where it's like I don't feel like I'm that much attached to my children
Mhm.
because I believe that they both have their own purpose,
Mm.
and I don't want to enable them and make them think how I think, but they have a purpose on this earth to fulfill, and I'm just here to be a support in that,
Mhm.
right? And to also be a protection, right? And a guide in a sense, right? But at the same time, I have to allow them to embark on their own journey. So I really pride myself on treating people the way that I want to be treated.
Mhm.
Like, and I see a lot of people in religion who claim to be Christians, just to be clear, that are not operating in that capacity.
Mhm.
There's a lot of judgment.
That
I
part.
ran across
Mhm.
this this quote that said a lot of times people are wondering why they keep ending up on the cross, but it's because God did not put you on this earth to judge people. And a lot of people are very judgmental of other people. And so that's why here on the Uncommonly Peculiar podcast, I really wanted to shine a light on allowing people to be authentic and to be able to express who they are,
Mhm.
but to be able to have that human approach to it where we can be kind and be open to hearing other people's journeys. Because at the end of the day, we may all be connected, but we didn't all get here the same way.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like we
Mhm.
have different
Mhm.
upbringings, right?
Yeah.
Like we literally do.
Yeah.
So that brings me to question number 4. Do you find your humanity being challenged as you continue to pursue your authenticity? So now switching to more of the humanity, the humanistic aspect of things, challenging like you being who you are, but also needing to be kind to other people. Because we see it with like society in terms of like culture and trends. Like a lot of people are on the bandwagon of what is being approved by society, and if you go against that, then something's wrong with you, right? But then at the same time, it's like I have to be true to myself, right? So how can I be true to myself and you're opposing me and still be kind
Mhm.
to you at the same time?
Ooh, that's hard.
I think that's a
Yeah.
scary
That's
question,
hard.
Yeah,
given today's climate, everything that's going
exactly.
Uh-huh.
on. I think for me, like, how do I still stay authentic? Although there's a lot of narratives right now in like politics and like social narratives that are awfully oppressive.
Yes.
I think I try not to generalize and think too strongly about that because I know that's not
Mm,
always the case.
Mhm.
And I think where I can be most authentic and show up the best is in my own personal relationships and interactions with individuals and not necessarily allowing stereotypes and like other things enter into those situations as much.
yeah, that's good.
Because I feel like there are a lot of stereotypes and blanket statements to be made that just are generally can be proven wrong on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
So I try
Definitely.
not to take too much stock. I still listen, obviously, and like to know what society is saying and what's been, what's going on politically. But for me, it's more important to focus like on my own interactions with others, and that's how I can kind of stay. At least, I guess the word that I thought of just now is how I can stay safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's huge.
Yeah.
Safe.
It's
Protecting.
stressful though. I don't know. I feel like I'm very vocal about what I believe in. And so like in terms of like the political climate, right, and
Yes.
humanity, I think there's a lot to be said about that right now. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like it
Mhm.
needs to be said.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much that's happening all at once, not just here, but in other countries that it's just like humanity is constantly challenged, right? So if you're not
Yes.
talking about it, then you're just like you're just a standby. You
Mm-hmm.
you let it happen essentially,
Right.
right? Not that we can all necessarily do something, but just doing nothing is also not that great either, right?
Right.
So
Hmm.
I feel like I'm authentic in that way, but when it comes
Mhm.
to people who you know personally that don't care about humanity in the way that you do, right?
Yeah.
They don't value the things that you do. It goes back to like what I was saying earlier. It's so hard to coexist with that person
Yeah.
and be comfortable and be how you would normally be with this person, knowing how they think and how they feel,
Yeah.
right? Like, I know people personally who voted the red way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's been really hard for me to know that, right? Cuz
Wow.
Hmm.
I know you. I know you personally. I
Mm-hmm.
know the people you surround yourself with, who are in marginalized communities. I know that there's things that, you faced. Like, an immigrant family. You're part of an immigrant family.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just so many things. Like, how do you vote against your own humanity, like your own self rights,
Hmm.
right? It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy to me. And so I'm really struggling with that fact. Like, how do I continue a relationship with people that I knew or that I know and that I love and that I care about to an extent, but I know that you don't care enough about other people
Wow.
because it doesn't affect you personally. I feel like that's one thing
Hmm.
that we see a lot
Yeah.
now is people they don't really care enough until it's in front of their face.
True.
And like, they can argue that all they want, but I think it's true. And I think, like, we can all say that at some point, we were apathetic to certain things until it affected us personally, like in some way.
True.
I feel like anybody could say that about a lot of things, but I feel like in today's climate, it's just really hard to have an authentic relationship and a relationship period with somebody who doesn't think about humanity in the way that you do, because, like I said, it just goes down to morals at the end of the day. And if we don't match on that, I don't think I could have you in my personal life because it brings me negative energy. And
Yeah.
why would I want
Hmm.
that? I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, and it's so hard to have those type of conversations because just like I was saying, like what feels safe for me, that probably feels safe for them is to be in their own perception of whatever the issue is.
Right.
So it can be for someone to step out of their own safety and like be vulnerable. That can be very challenging,
Mhm.
and it doesn't. I feel like it doesn't really happen that often.
Mm-mm.
So it's a hard place to be in. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Especially to people who know you, like,
Hmm.
cause I feel like those are the people that are the hardest people to have the conversations with,
Yeah, for
is
sure.
people who are close to you.
Yeah.
Like, that's so difficult.
Yeah. Because they've already made up their mind about you.
Mhm.
So it's like an ongoing struggle just
Mhm.
to get
Hmm.
them to see your new perspective or to see you in the light of what you've worked for and who you've become. But I
Mhm.
think also, too, on the political side of things, you've opened up a great level of awareness for me because and just to be transparent, I was someone who did not vote because I just was confused with regards to the candidates, but also to their intention and what they would do. I wasn't vulnerable enough to trust neither of them but I feel like that was coming from a lack of not knowing, right? It just brings me to like coming up in an environment like low income environment,
Mhm.
right? And being oppressed in a sense, right? There was a lot of information that we just was not privy to or we didn't have access to or didn't intend to try to find out, right? And so because of that, like a lot of the decisions when it comes to politics, I'm just not informed, right? And being not informed, it's easily to talk about things that, like you said, that doesn't really affect you.
Mhm.
But the thing about it is it can be affecting you, but because you're not aware, that it's affecting you. Now you're having a conversation with someone who is aware.
Right.
And at that point, it's like you're irritating them because you have no clue what you're talking about.
Mhm.
Right. And so that's why like that brung up another area for me, because I pride myself on one of the scriptures in the Bible. It says people perish because of a lack of knowledge. So now I'm kind of diving into
Mhm.
the political aspect of things,
Mm.
and it's interesting too, because social work, has another level, social work policy, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so it's just like, okay, well, maybe you need to start exploring more about that just so that you're aware,
Mhm.
And I think I definitely owe that to our people of the
Mhm.
world in general, and then also to my children's to
Mhm.
be aware so
Yeah.
that I can make more informed decisions.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where you have to be aware that you don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
don't enter
Uh-huh.
into a conversation with someone who's informed, trying to challenge them on something you're not aware of. I think we see that a lot
Mhm.
in
Oh,
society.
Oh,
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
We see that a lot. And one of my favorite quotes is can I cuss on this podcast?
You be authentic.
Okay. One of my favorite quotes is you may not fuck with politics, but politics is going to fuck with you,
For sure.
Mm,
right?
I like that.
So that is my favorite quote, especially to address people who are apathetic, who don't want to be political, right? Like
Mhm.
no matter what you do, politics is going to affect you.
Yeah. For
And you
sure.
may not want to know about it. You may not. It's overwhelming, and I totally understand that, right? Like I
Mhm.
gotta take a break sometimes too. Like sometimes I gotta
Mhm.
step away from the news. I gotta step away from whatever our president is doing. Like it's overwhelming, but at the end of the day, I think that's how we get into this cycle. Is that
Mhm.
people complain about what's going on in the world. We're doomed. We have all these problems. Like everything's going wrong, but it's like that's how these things are able to happen because they pull the wool over your eyes, right?
Yeah.
When you're not informed,
Yes.
then they're definitely going to be able to do whatever they want,
For sure.
right?
Right.
Like and if you look at who is in power and who
Mhm.
has all the money, it's not marginalized communities, it's not people of color.
Right.
It's there's a history to this, and I
Yeah.
feel like especially as social workers, social work is political in
Mhm.
every
Mhm.
aspect, no matter
Every.
what you do. And I feel like it is part of our identity to kind of just do our due diligence and be
Yes.
informed because at the end of the day, we're helping the same communities that are being affected by politics, including
Yes.
ourselves. And I feel like it's necessary. So when
Mhm.
people say they don't mess with politics, it's crazy to me because at the end of the day, like it's gonna mess with you whether you like it or not,
For sure.
you know?
And they're very strategic
Mhm.
how politics like informs people and the things, especially when you're thinking about like the media and how they put things out. And I say that to say, this recent interview with President Trump and Zelensky. If you look at the media,
Yes.
there's a lot of clips on the media that's honing into one specific like conversation, right? But the conversation was actually like over an hour. And so when you look at the full interview, it's like, whoa, the perception that I receive from just looking at the clip is totally different from
Mm.
looking at the full interview. And
Mhm.
I'm saying all that to say that it's important for us just not to look at other people's perspective, but for us to do the research and for us to get the information and perceive it the way it's been spoken to us. Like that's very important for us to do because as we collectively talk about it individually based on our own authenticity, there's different things that will come up. And we are better if we have those conversations together versus,
Mhm.
just going off of what they're telling us.
Yeah. Wasn't there that quote that he said? I think it was him. I keep seeing people say it in reference to him when he was I forgot exactly what it
Which
was, but it
person?
was like, what's his name?
Zelensky?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
He said something like, at least I think I didn't watch the whole interview because, like you
Mhm.
said, I'm taking a break from politics right now, so I didn't watch the whole thing, but
Mhm.
I think he said it, but it was something like you're raising the tone of your voice, but not the logic of your argument,
Wow.
Mm.
something like that. And I was like,
Wow.
ooh,
I like, because I'm
that's a mic
telling you,
drop.
his affect and the
It
insight
was
that
just
he was
calm.
giving
Yeah,
us
and
in
Trump
that
was getting
interview.
really. I saw parts of it. He was getting really up there. But he
Yeah.
was just like, and I feel like that's common though.
Yeah.
People they raise their voice,
Come on.
but they're not talking about nothing.
At all.
Their
You
point
know,
hasn't
like
changed.
it's not. Yeah,
At
you haven't
all.
convinced me of anything. You're
No.
just yelling at me now.
Spit it out.
Yeah.
You're just posturing and threatening me now.
Yeah,
Right.
because the stuff that he was saying was like, whoa, I don't think we've thought about that.
Mhm.
But that's our point, It's like, do your research and tell me your viewpoint on what you've gathered, and let us have a conversation,
Mhm.
because we may be able to come to some type of common ground,
Mhm.
right? When you think about humanity, we all, at the end of the day, I say this saying all the time. At the end of the day, everybody wants to go home.
So true. You eat
Everybody
a
wanna
great
go
meal.
home. Come
Yeah,
on.
there's some ties that definitely connect us all as humans.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think, being able to get down to those basic factors
Mm-hmm.
makes conversations easier, makes
Exactly.
people's openness or willingness to see other people's viewpoints a little bit easier
Mhm.
when we're able to have a commonality.
Yes.
I think it's super easy to forget that and
Yeah.
just focus on the differences and
Yeah, for
confirmation
sure.
biases, all that
Yes.
stuff. So I think it's like it's clouded, and it takes
Very much
us,
so.
a strong person, two strong people, to have difficult conversations when they have completely different viewpoints.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because if we can agree that we both, at the end of the day, want to go home, then where can we meet in the middle? Or maybe we're gonna meet on the
Sometimes
side.
we're not gonna meet
Look, or
nowhere.
maybe we might meet on the
Yeah.
side.
Sometimes I'm not meeting
Yeah.
with you at all. I'm going home,
But,
and
like,
you
let's
go
meet.
home to your house.
But let's meet. But let's
But
meet.
sometimes I might not want to, and that's okay.
Right, because we're gonna agree to go home.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like some type of commonality,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So last question before we wrap up this episode. What lesson do you wish you would have learned earlier? And this could be just anything.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be in terms of authenticity and humanity, just anything.
For me, I've thought about this one too a lot. For me, something that I wish I would have learned earlier is to take greater stock in my own personal achievements, the
Ooh,
things that I've done,
that's so
the
good.
activities, the skills that I've learned. I feel like I kind of take more of a passive side eye on myself, which I'm working on, to where I don't value my journey as much as like I really feel like now I'm much better about it and like starting to value myself a bit more. But
Yes.
that's something that I'm now learning that like I didn't really do.
Amazing.
yeah.
That's good. Because you're amazing.
I know.
Yeah.
You are amazing.
You are.
Seriously.
Thank you.
Know. I think about what is something that I wish I learned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I think self-value and self-love.
Yes.
Because we've been through our fair share of terrible relationships, right?
Yes.
And I've just learned along the way that like my past relationships have built me up so much, where you just realize, wow, like I let a lot of stuff fly
Yes.
because I was too scared to love myself more,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I feel like that has changed, and I love myself more, like, than anything. I feel like that's something that I've realized as I got older, is just like I'm gonna put myself first because I need to in order to serve those around me. Just in general, like I always gotta put myself first, because I gotta take care of me.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, and if I'm happy, then I can also pour into other people's cups.
Yeah.
You can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Right.
Truly.
And what is it like? You have to pour from like the overflow,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
What's in the
so
cup is
I
for
think
you.
that's something that I'm still
Mhm.
working on, but it's something that I did wish I knew earlier. But at the same time, those experiences brought me to where I am now. So,
Yeah.
I don't regret it.
Yeah. For me, I would say mine is it's okay not to know. I
Mm.
used to be a person who felt like I needed to know everything and I had an answer for everything. But I've found that my power lies in not knowing sometimes.
Mhm.
Because when you don't know, then you open up the door to